تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. صلى الله وسلم عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله وسلم عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. عظم الله أجوركم جميعا. On this day we send our condolences to our master, the 12th Imam, Al-Imam Al-Hujjah, Ajrullah Ta'ala Farajuh Al-Sharif. And today, the day of Ashura, is reserved for the recital of the Maqtal, the epic of Ashura, the story of what transpired on that day with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his family and his companions. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. At the dawn of the 10th day of Muharram, Imam Hussein led his followers for the morning prayer. Then he wore his grandfather's armor and turban and put on his father's sword. He then stood to address his followers. Starting with the praise of Allah, he said, "Inna Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qad adhina fi qatli wa qatlikum fi hadha al-yawm, fa'alaykum bis-sabri wal-qital." Allah has destined that you and I shall be killed today. I therefore urge you to be strong and resilient in fighting. Then Imam Hussein began preparing for war and mobilized his army. He made Zuhair ibn al-Qayyim the commander of the right flank, Habib ibn Madahir the commander of the left flank, and his household at the center. Imam then gave the flag to his brother Al-Abbas. The troops gathered in front of the tents where the women and children were housed. Umar ibn Sa'ad, the commander of the enemy army, came with 30,000 troops. He made Amr ibn al-Hajjaj the commander of the right flank, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan the commander of the left flank. When Imam Hussein saw their gathering, he raised his hands to the sky and prayed, "Allahumma anta thiqati fi kulli karb, wa anta raja'i fi kulli shidda, wa anta li fi kulli amrin nazala bi thiqatun wa udda. كم من هم يضعف فيه الفؤاد وتقل فيه الحيلة ويخذل فيه الصديق ويشمت فيه العدو أنزلته بك وشكوته إليك رغبة مني إليك عمن سواك ففرجته عني وكشفته فأنت ولي كل نعمة وصاحب كل حسنة ومنتهى كل رغبة." O Allah, you are my trust in every sorrow, my hope in every predicament, my refuge in every ordeal. How many a distress that weakens the heart, makes the enemy rejoice. When I entrusted it to you and resorted it to you out of preference of others, you did not let me down. You are the giver of every benefit and the ultimate source of every need. Then he mounted his horse and stood in front of them, ready to speak. He began by saying, "O people, track back my lineage to see who I am. Then look back and think to yourselves. Think about whether it is right for you. Think about whether it is right for you to violate my integrity. Am I not the son of your prophet's daughter? Am I not the son of your prophet's successor? Was not Hamza, the master of martyrs, my father's uncle? Was not Ja'far al-Tayyar my uncle? Have you not heard the prophet's words concerning my brother and I? Hassan and Hussein are the masters of the youth of paradise. Whether you believe in what I say or not, even though it is the truth, there are men among you that if you ask them, they will tell you I speak the truth. Ask Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, Zayd ibn Arqam, and Anas ibn Malik to tell you that they heard these words from the Messenger of Allah in favor of my brother and I. Submit to the authority of your kinsmen, said Qais ibn al-Ash'ath. They have never treated you wrongly. Imam Hussein responded, "By God, I will never give you my hand like a humiliated man, nor will I flee like a slave. لا والله لا أعطيكم بيدي إعطاء الدليل ولا أفر فرار العبيد. Imam Hussein then raised his hands towards the sky and said, اللهم احبس عنهم قطر السماء وابعث عليهم سنين كسنين يوسف وسلط عليهم غلام ثقيف يسقيهم كأسا مصبرة لا يدع فيهم أحدا إلا قتله. O Allah, give them no rain, afflict them with the barren years like the years of Yusuf, for they have labeled us as liars and let us down. You are our Lord, we rely on you and to you we return. Then he began to plead for help and rescue. When Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi heard his plea for help, he went to Umar ibn Sa'ad and asked him, are you really going to fight this man? Umar replied, yes, by the Almighty. The kind of fighting in which heads will fall and arms will be cut off. Al-Hurr said, are you not satisfied with what he has proposed to you? Umar replied, if it was up to me, I would accept his proposal, but your master Ibn Ziyad has his orders. Al-Hurr then stood in the middle of the battlefield and began to tremble. Al-Muhajir ibn Aus turned to him and said, that I have never seen you like this in any situation. And if someone asked me about the most courageous man in Kufa, I would have never chosen anyone else other than you. Al-Hurr said, إني أرى نفسي مخيرة بين الجنة والنار. I am making a decision between paradise and hellfire. And by Allah, I choose nothing over paradise, even if it means my death. He then gradually began to draw nearer to the camp of Imam Hussein. And he was saying, Allahumma ilayka unib, fatub alay, faqad ar'abtu quluba awliyaik, wa awlada binti nabiyik. Oh Allah, forgive me, for I have struck terror into the hearts of the children of your Prophet. As soon as he reached the Imam asked him who he was. Al-Hurr, appearing with tears in his eyes, said, my master, I am the one that brought you to this land and prevented you from returning to where you came from. The Imam asked him, he said, are you Al-Hurr? He said, yes. And is there any sort of forgiveness? Will God accept my repentance? Imam replied, if you repent, Allah will forgive. Umar ibn Sa'ad at that point began to draw nearer to the camp of Imam Hussein, and he ordered the flag bearer to move forward. He then took an arrow, placed it in his bow and released it in the direction of the Imam's camp. And he said, bear witness for me with the Amir that I was the first to shoot. The arrows then followed like rain, causing injuries among the companions of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein then said, قوموا رحمكم الله إلى الموت الذي لا بد منه فإن هذه السهام رسل القوم إليكم. My companions, rise to certain death. May Allah have mercy on you. These arrows are the messengers of your enemies to you. The companions waged a battle and fought for an hour. When the dust settled, there were 50 dead. When the Imam saw this sight, he said, اشتد غضب الله على اليهود إذ جعلوا له ولدا واشتد غضبه على النصارى إذ جعلوه ثالث ثلاثة واشتد غضبه على المجوس إذ عبدوا الشمس والقمر دونه واشتد غضبه على قوم اتفقت كلمتهم على قتل ابن بنت نبيهم أما والله لا أجيبهم إلى شيء مما يريدون حتى ألقى الله وأنا مخضب بدمي. Allah's wrath on the Jews was great because they claimed he had a son, and on the Christians because they made him one of the Trinity, and on the people who were unanimous in the agreement to kill the son of their prophet's daughter. By Allah, I am not going to give up until I meet God drenched in my blood. He then shouted, ألا هل من ناصر ينصرنا ألا هل من معين يعيننا ألا هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله. Is there no one who will come to our rescue? Is there no one who will protect the sanctity of the Prophet's family? When the woman heard his plea, they began to weep. One by one, the companions of Imam Hussein asked for permission to enter the battlefield to fight the enemy, bidding him farewell. Al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi was one of the first of them. He attacked the enemy troops, killing over 40 of them. When his horse was wounded, he fought them on foot until he fell to the ground. Imam Hussein rushed to him, removed the blood and sand from his face, and he said, "Bakhin, bakhin laka ya hur." Congratulations, O Hur. You are truly a free man, just like your mother named you. Aslam, the servant of Imam Hussein, was next. He fought very bravely in the battlefield. When he was badly wounded, he called on the Imam for help. The Imam came to him. He embraced him for the last time. Aslam smiled. He thanked Allah for granting him martyrdom and passed away. Muslim ibn Awsaja, another companion of the Imam, assaulted the enemy and fought bravely. At that moment, Amr ibn al-Hajjaj, along with his troops, counterattacked the camp of Imam Hussein. When the two forces clashed and the dust settled, Muslim was found fallen but still alive. Imam Hussein and Habib ibn Madahir rushed to him. The Imam said to him, "Rahimakallah ya Muslim, may Allah have mercy on you." Habib said to him that I am so sorry to see you in this state, and that if I wasn't absolutely sure that I would follow in your footsteps, I would have asked me to give you your last will. Muslim said, "Yes, I do have one final request. My request is that you take care of this man, alayka bihada," and he pointed to the Imam. "Sacrifice the last breath you have for him." Habib told him that you should rest assured that I will. Among those who remained alive at this stage was Wahab al-Kalbi. Wahab was a Christian man who was accompanied by his wife that he was newly married to, and his mother. All of them had declared their Islam before Imam Hussein on the way to Karbala. His mother urged him to do his best in the battlefield. His wife did not want him to go because they were newlyweds. Nevertheless, Wahab entered the battlefield, killing some and wounding others. After a while, he returned to his mother and he asked her, he said, "Mother, are you satisfied with me?" She replied to him, "I will never be satisfied until you are killed for the cause of Imam Hussein." His wife stepped in and objected at that moment, since they were newlyweds. She said, "Come back, do not go back out into the battlefield." His mother interrupted, saying, go back into the battlefield, keep fighting," and she was encouraging him. Imam Hussein alayhi salam encouraged him. Then he went back into the battlefield and he resumed his fighting until he killed 19 knights and another 20 of the infantry. His fingers were then severed. At that moment, his wife carried a pole and rushed towards him, saying, "Fidaka abi wa ummi, qatil duna tayyibin harama Rasulillah." She said, "Do not return alive back to me." Wahab turned to her. He said, "What is the matter? Only some time ago you were urging me to stay back. You were urging me not to go out into the battlefield." His wife replied to him, "Ya Wahab, la talumni, inna wa'iyat al-Husayn qatta'at niyata qalbi. Ya Wahab, ra'aytuhu jalisan bibab al-khayma, wa huwa yunadi wa qillata nasirah." "Oh Wahab, do not blame me, for the cries of Hussein are crushing my heart. I saw him standing at the entrance of the tent saying, "Wa qillata nasirah," how little of supporters we have. Do not blame me. And that his voice wounded my heart. Wahab kept fighting until he lost both arms and was killed. His wife walked towards his body and sat near his head, wiping away the blood and saying, "Congratulations, for now you are guaranteed a place in heaven. And I pray to the Almighty to bestow it upon me, to make me join you." Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, who was around, dispatched his servant to kill her. He dealt a fatal blow to her head with a staff, and she died immediately, being the first lady to give her life for Imam Hussein. After the noon prayers, Jawn, Mawla Abi Dhar, the servant of Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, approached Imam Hussein asking for permission to fight. The Imam told him that you do not need to fight, and that you pursued us in good health, and that now during the time of hardship you are free of our allegiance. Jawn at that moment said, "At times of comfort I was with you. How is it that in times of hardship I abandon you? Never, that will not happen, and I will fight with you until my blood mixes with yours." Jawn entered and fought very bravely. Until he fell, he called for the Imam. Imam Hussein wept over him. He placed his cheeks on the cheeks of Jawn a gesture of love and honor. Once all the companions had passed away, the family of Imam Hussein alayhi salam got ready for battle. The first to come was Ali al-Akbar, Imam Hussein's oldest son. According to narrations, he was around 27 years old. When Ali asked for permission from his father, Imam Hussein could not hold back his tears. He looked over to Umar ibn Sa'ad and said, قطع الله رحمك كما قطعت رحمي ولم تحفظ قرابتي من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وسلط الله عليك من يذبحك على فراشك. ثم رفع شيبته المقدسة نحو السماء وقال اللهم اشهد على هؤلاء فإنه برز إليهم أشبه الناس برسولك محمد خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا وكنا إذا اشتقنا إلى رؤية نبيك نظرنا إلى وجه هذا الغلام. He said, O Umar, may Allah bereave you of your family the same way that you have bereaved me of mine. May He send someone to kill you on your bed. Then he looked to the sky and said, O Allah, bear witness upon these people, because the most similar youth to the Prophet has come out to meet them. O Lord, deprive them from the riches of the land, divide them and bring your wrath upon them. Ali al-Akbar entered the battlefield, killing tens of the troops and reciting, أنا علي بن الحسين بن علي نحن ورب البيت أولى بالنبي تالله لا يحكم فينا ابن الدعي أضربكم بالسيف أحامي عن أبي ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي. His mother Layla was inside of the tent. She was looking to the face of Imam Hussein. All of a sudden, the facial expression of the Imam began to change. It changed to an expression of worry. At that moment, she became worried when she saw the expression. She said, has anything happened to my son? He turned to her. He said, no, he is still in the battlefield, but a warrior has emerged from the other side, and I am afraid for the safety of my son. Go back into the tent and pray for the return of your son. For I had heard Rasulullah, my grandfather, say that when a woman prays for her child, that prayer is answered. So she went back into the tent, she turned her head to the sky, and she started to say, Ya Radda Yusuf ila Ya'qub, Ya Kashif al-Kurab al-'idham an Ayyub. O Allah, O the one who removed the affliction from Ayyub, O the one who brought back Yusuf to Ya'qub, bring back my son for me. And in a few moments, due to the immense thirst that he felt and the pain from the scorching sun, he came back to the camp asking his father for water. Abatah, al-'atash qad qatalani wa thiqlu al-hadid ajhadani. Imam Hussein alayhi salam told him that he is thirstier than his son, and he assured him that Rasulullah will be the first to quench his thirst. Ali went back fighting with even greater fears. It was as if his grandfather Imam Ali was in the battlefield. Finally, Murra ibn Munqadh al-Abdi approached him and dealt a blow to him, causing him to fall from the horse. The horse, not being able to see because of the blood covering its eyes, dragged Ali towards the enemy camp. The enemy troops started to strike him from every angle. Ali al-Akbar lastly cried out, عليك مني السلام يا أبا عبد الله هذا جدي سقاني بكأسه شربة لا أظمأ بعدها أبدا وإن لك كأسا مذخورة فالعجل العجل. O Aba Abdullah, farewell. I now see my grandfather, and he is giving me water from a cup that has quenched my thirst, and never again shall I be thirsty. And there is a cup waiting for you. Imam Hussein rushed to him, seeing what is remaining from his son. He placed his cheeks on the cheeks of his son, saying, Bunayya Ali, على الدنيا بعدك العفا ما أجرأهم على الرحمن وعلى انتهاك حرمة الرسول يعز على جدك وأبيك أن تدعوهم فلا يجيبونك وتستغيث بهم فلا يغيثونك. Life is not worth living anymore after you, my son. How dare they encroach on Allah and violate the sanctity of the Prophet? Alas, it is hard on your grandfather and your grandfather that you call upon them for help which they cannot provide. He then scooped a handful of his blood and threw it towards the sky, not a single drop falling to the ground. Imam Hussein then ordered the youth to come carry Ali back to the camp.
The women gathered around Ali, him being the first one to go out from the family. They were weeping, they were crying, they were beating their chests. Imam Hussein joined them in their lamentation. After that, the turn was now for the 14-year-old Qasim, the son of Al-Imam al-Hassan. Imam Hussein first refused to give him permission, since Qasim was the only remaining memory of his brother Al-Hassan. Al-Qasim brought a letter to Imam Hussein, which was from Al-Imam al-Hassan, urging him to allow his son to fight. The letter had said, بُنَيَّ قَاسِمْ إِذَا اشْتَدَّتْ عَلَيْكَ الْأُمُورِ فَعَلَيْكَ بِنُصْرَةِ عَمِّكَ الْحُسَيْنِ. O Qasim, one day you will find yourself in hardship, and in that moment come to the aid of your uncle Hussein. Imam Hussein alayhi salam then asked Qasim, كَيْفَ تَجِدُ الْمَوْتِ? How is death? How do you perceive death? Al-Qasim replied, فِي نُصْرَتِكُمْ أَحْلَى مِنَ الْعَسَلِ. If it is in your service and if it is in your protection, then death to me is sweeter than honey. Imam Hussein embraced the young boy. They began to weep until they both fell to the floor. After they got up, it became time to prepare to send him to the battlefield. He turned to his sister Zainab. He said, "Ukhayya Zainab, itini bi'imamati akhi al-Hasan." My sister Zainab, bring for me the turban of my brother Al-Hasan. He brought for him the turban. He placed it on his head. He gave him the armor and the sword, and he sent him out into the battlefield. Al-Qasim, this brave young man, went out saying, "In tunkiruni fa ana najlu al-Hasan, صبط النبي المصطفى والمؤتمن هذا الحسين كالأسير المرتهن بين أناس لاصقوا صوب المزن." He said, if you do not know me, know that I am the son of Al-Hasan. I am the grandson of the Prophet, and I am the grandson of Imam Ali. This Hussein here is like a prisoner between people who have betrayed him. He began to fight very bravely until the enemies started to look for a way to get to him. One of the enemy soldiers said that, "By God, I will bereave him and I will take him away from his uncle." Finally, the opportunity presented itself. Because of the intensity of the battle, one of the sandals slipped from the feet of Al-Qasim. As he bent down to fix it, Amr ibn Sa'id al-Asdi hit him with the sword over his head. Imam Hussein rushed to him, crying over his body, saying, "Bu'dan liqawmin qataluk, wa khasmuhum yawm al-qiyamati jadduka wa abuk." ثم قال, and then he said, عز والله على عمك أن تدعوه فلا يجيبك أو يجيبك ثم لا ينفعك. It is hard for me that you call upon me and I cannot help you and I cannot come to your aid. You call but I cannot respond. Al-Qasim was brought back to the tents. They laid his body next to the body of Ali al-Akbar. Imam Hussein laid himself between the two bodies. He would look left to the body of Ali al-Akbar, look right to the body of Al-Qasim and begin to weep. And then he started to say, Allahumma ahsahim adada, ولا تغادر منهم أحدا ولا تغفر لهم أبدا صبرا يا بني عمومتي صبرا يا أهل بيتي لا رأيتم هوانا بعد هذا اليوم أحد أبدا. O Allah, do not lose count of these people and do not forgive them. My cousins, my family, forbear in adversity. You will never see disgrace after today. When Al-Abbas alayhi salam saw the death toll rising, he stood up and ordered his brothers Abdullah, Uthman and Ja'far to enter the battlefield and fight one by one. One by one his brothers fought and were killed. It was now time for Al-Abbas himself to enter the battlefield. He came to his brother Imam Hussein seeking permission to fight. Imam Hussein did not want to lose him. He was his protector. He was his standard bearer. He provided a sense of security to the women folk, a sense of comfort. Tears filled the eyes of Imam Hussein. "O brother," Imam Hussein said, "you are the bearer of my flag. If you die, my entire army will collapse and my enemies will rejoice." Al-Abbas replied, "I am tired of these hypocrites. I cannot stand the sounds of the children crying out of thirst. Their cries, 'We are thirsty, we are thirsty,' are killing me. I want to seek my revenge." When Imam Hussein saw that Al-Abbas was adamant about fighting, he said, "My brother, "Go and seek some water for these children." Al-Abbas immediately mounted his horse. He took the water container and he headed towards the river, cutting through the enemy lines. He was surrounded by about 4,000 troops who aimed at him with his arrows, but he did not fear their multitudes. He was dodging them. The standard was hoisted over his head. He started attacking them, causing them to flee in front of him. And finally, he managed to reach the water at the river with fortitude. As soon as he reached the river, he grabbed a handful of water to drink. He felt the coolness of that water. فَتَذَكَّرَ عَطَشَ الْحُسَيْنِ. He remembered the thirst of his brother Hussein. Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says, كَانَ قَلْبَ عَمِّي الْعَبَّاسِ كَصَالِيَةِ الْجَمْرِ مِنَ الظَّمَا. That the heart of my uncle Al-Abbas was like a burning piece of charcoal. This is how thirsty he was. But he remembered the thirst of his brother. He dropped the water immediately. He could not drink while the Imam and the children were thirsty. He began to say, يا نفس من بعد الحسين هوني وبعده لا كنت أن تكوني هذا الحسين شارب المنون وتشربين بارد المعين والله ما هذا فعال ديني ولا فعال صادق اليقين. O nafs, how could you get yourself to drink the cold water and enjoy it while your brother and while the children are thirsty? He let go of that water. The very thing that would give him strength to fight, he let go of for the sake of his brother, for the sake of his children. He understood what his mission was, so he began to fill the water container. He tied it, he mounted his horse, and he began to head towards the camp. All of a sudden, Umar ibn Sa'ad turned to them. He said, "Do you know what will happen if water reaches the camp of Hussein? Surround him. Do not allow him to deliver that water." So the enemy troops surrounded him from every direction, trying to block him. They tried to attack him face to face, but they could not. This is where they hatched a plan to hide behind the palm trees and come out when he least expected it. Zayd ibn al-Raqqad and Hakim ibn al-Tufayl, both of them hiding behind trees, waiting for Al-Abbas to approach. All of a sudden, Zayd came out and struck Al-Abbas on his right arm, immediately severing it. Al-Abbas began to recite, "Wallahi in qata'tumu yamini, inni uhami abadan an dini, wa an imam sadiq al-yaqini, najl al-nabiy al-tahir al-amini." By God, if you strike off my right arm, I will continue to protect those around me. I will never give up on my mission. He then grabbed the container with his left arm until another one came out from behind a palm tree and struck his left arm, severing it. Al-Abbas began to say, "Ya nafsu la takhshi min al-kuffari wa abshiri bi rahmat al-jabbari ببغيهم قد قطعوا يساري فأصلهم يا ربح حر النار." O nafs, even though they have struck both of your arms, do not be afraid to continue to fight against them. He managed at that moment to grab the water container with his teeth, staying without his two arms. He began to sprint and run towards the camp of Imam Hussein. He was hoping that he would have a chance to deliver some of that water, but the enemy did not give him a chance. They rained down on him with arrows. One arrow struck him in his eye. Another one struck the water container, causing it to drop. Another arrow pierced through his chest. Al-Abbas fell to the floor. At that moment, he was hopeless. With the container fallen and the water spilling from it, Al-Abbas lost all hope, and he stopped moving towards the camp of the Imam. Instead, he remained in his spot. All of a sudden, one of the wicked troops struck him with a pole on his head, causing him to fall onto the ground. He began to call Imam Hussein for help. "Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, akhi adrik akhak." My brother, come to the rescue of your brother. Imam Hussein alayhi salam rushed to him. When the enemy soldiers saw the Imam rushing, they began to flee. He turned to them, the Imam, he said, "Ila ayna tafirrun wa qad kasartum dhahri, ila ayna tafirrun wa qad qataltum ibn walidi." Where are you fleeing to now that you have broken my back? where are you fleeing now that you have killed the son of my father? Imam Hussein rushed to him, causing them to flee. When he approached him, he first saw the water container with the water spilling. Then he saw the flag on the ground. Then he saw the two arms of Al-Abbas scattered on the battlefield. Al-Abbas was laying on the ground, one arrow embedded in his eye, another arrow embedded in his chest. Imam Hussein could not control himself. He cried immensely, saying, أخي الآن انكسر ظهري وقلت حيلتي وشمت بي عدوي أخي من للعيال بعدك. My dear brother, your death has broken my back, and now my enemy is rejoicing. They are happy over your death. O Abbas, now that you are gone, there is no one to support me any longer. Who will safeguard the daughters of Rasulullah after you? Imam Hussein urged Al-Abbas to get up so that he can take him back to the camp. Al-Abbas refused. He had promised the children to get them water. He could not go back empty-handed. After a few moments, Imam Hussein was seen walking back to the camp all alone. He was downhearted, sorrowful, hopeless, and weeping, wiping his tears with his sleeves. Imam Hussein came back to the camp. As he returned, Sukaina approached him, his daughter. She began to ask about her uncle. She was hoping that perhaps some water was brought back. He told her that he had been killed. Zainab overheard him, Lady Zainab, and she began to scream, "Oh Abbas, what a loss!" The woman started crying, and Hussein joined them, saying, "Wa akha, wa Abbasa, wa day'atana ba'dak." After the death of Al-Abbas, Imam Hussein was left without any supporters. He looked around. He saw nothing but dead bodies around him. He began to call out, ألا هل من ناصر ينصرنا ألا هل من ذاب يذب عن حرم رسول الله هل من موحد يخاف الله فينا هل من مغيث يرجو الله في إغاثتنا. Is there no one to come to our aid? Is there no one to come to our rescue? Is there not one person who fears God? Is there not one person who can protect us? At that moment, Imam Hussein alayhi salam began to say his final farewell. But at that moment, his sister, Lady Zainab, brought to him his infant Abdullah al-Radi', the 6-month-old, the one who had not drank anything, the one who had been weakened, one of the innocent victims of that day. Lady Zainab told him, she said, "My brother, before you go, please ask these men for a few drops of water for this child. This child is dying out of thirst. He can no longer breathe. He can no longer live. He can no longer survive." Imam Hussein took his son and he headed towards the enemy, and he began to speak to the people. He said, "O people, if you consider me a sinner, if you consider me a transgressor, if you are here to punish me, then I ask you with your conscience, what is the sin and what is the transgression of this 6-month-old baby? He is not here to hurt anyone." And at that moment, the conscience of some of the soldiers began to awaken. They began to look left and right, seeing what to do. At that moment, Umar ibn Sa'ad, noticing that this was a problem that he had to deal with, he turned to Harmala ibn Kahil. Harmala was one of those bloodthirsty people, those bloodlusted people, a heartless, merciless soldier who was known for his expert aim in archery. Umar turned to him and said, "Ya Harmala, iqta' niza' al-qawm." "Oh Harmala, I want you to end the discussion of the people." All of a sudden, Harmala ibn Kahil, he loaded an arrow into his bow. He waited for that proper moment, that right moment. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, as he was holding his baby, his 6-month-old baby, the cloth from his neck was removed. It was pushed away by the wind. Harmala ibn Kahil saw his target. He saw the neck of that infant. He shot the arrow towards the infant and it landed in his neck. As he felt the heat of the arrow, he removed his arms from his cloth and began to move his arms. He felt the heat of the arrow in his neck. Al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam took some of that blood, he threw it up to the sky. Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says that not one single drop came back, and he was heard saying, "Hawwana alayya ma nazala bi annahu bi'aynillah." All of these tragedies are in the way of Allah. This is what makes it bearable for me. Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says that not a single one, not a single drop came back. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, some reports tell us that he took the baby back to the family. Some say that he took the baby and he buried the baby himself. As he was there weeping, he began to hear a voice say, "Da'u ya Hussein, da'u ya Hussein, فَإِنَّ لَهُ مُرْضَعَةً فِي الْجَنَّةِ." Leave him, O Hussein. Do not worry about him, for he has a nurse who is waiting for him in paradise. At that moment, Imam Hussein looked hopeless to live. He was sorrowful but determined to meet his Lord. He knew that he was about to face martyrdom. He came back to his family, bidding them farewell for one last time. Ya Zainab, wa ya Kulthum, wa ya Sukaynah, wa ya Ruqayyah, wa ya Rabab, alaykunna minni salam, al-wida'. الوداع فهذا آخر الاجتماع وقد قرب منكن الافتجاع واستعدوا للبلاء واعلموا أن الله حافظكن وحاميكن وسينجيكن من شر الأعداء. أو زينب, أو كلثوم, أو رقية, أو سكينة, أو رباب, may peace be with you. I am going away. This is the final farewell and we shall meet in paradise. Be patient after my death, for you have many tragedies awaiting for you. Then he asked for his horse. Lady Zainab alayhi salam brought him his horse, tears filling her eyes. When Imam Hussein mounted his horse and began to head towards the battlefield, he heard a faint voice calling him from behind. He looked back to see that it was his sister, Lady Zainab. She asked him to come down from the horse one time. She said to him, "There is one final thing that I need to do. Come down from your horse. Open your armor, show me your neck." She embraced him and she planted a kiss on his neck and his chest. She then turned toward Medina and she said, "Ummah ya Fatima, laqad istarja'tu al-wadi'a wa addaytu al-amana." My mother Fatima, I have done as you have asked me to do. Imam Hussein rode his horse one last time and he charged the enemy and he began to recite, "Ana al-Husayn ibn Ali, alaytu an la anthani, ahmi iyalat abi, amdi ala din al-nabi." Therefore, at that moment, Umar ibn Sa'ad began to yell out the crowd, "Mind you, go and attack him from every direction. Do you know who is his father?" Then they began to rain down upon him with arrows. The soldiers cut him off of his camp. He said to them, "وَيْحَكُمْ يَا شِيعَةَ آلِ أَبِي سُفْيَانَ إِنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ لَكُمْ دِينٌ وَكُنْتُمْ لَا تَخَافُونَ الْمَعَادِ فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ إِنْ كُنْتُمْ عُرُبًا كَمَا تَزْعَمُونَ." He said to them, "O people, O followers of Abu Sufyan, what are you doing? Why are you attacking my family? If you are truly free people, then do not force yourselves to be in this situation." Shimr replied, "What are you saying, O son of Fatima?" Imam Hussein replied, "I am the one who is fighting you, and the women are not at fault. So as long as I am alive, forbid your insolent thugs from harassing my womenfolk." Shimr accepted that request, whereupon the enemy soldiers targeted him. A fierce fighting raged. Since he was thirsty, he attacked the flank of the army which had sealed off the river. He managed to disperse them and make his way to the river. Once he was near the water, he extended his hand to drink. A caller called out, "Do you enjoy drinking water whilst the integrity of your family is being violated?" He let the water spill from his hands even though he was intensely thirsty. He did not drink. He returned to the direction of the tents and charged the enemy once again. When Umar ibn Sa'ad saw him approaching, he ordered his soldiers to attack him from every direction. One by one they met the Imam fighting them off fiercely. After killing tens of them and after being severely wounded, the Imam became tired. He asked the enemy for some water. Shimr answered, "You are not going to taste it until you enter the hellfire." Imam Hussein at that moment, too tired to continue, had to stop and rest. As he was resting, one of the enemies struck him with a stone on his forehead, causing blood to gush down from his face. The Imam then took a piece of cloth to wipe the blood from his face. Suddenly, another enemy pointed an arrow at the Imam and he shot him in his chest. The Imam began to recite, "Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah, sabran ala qada'ik, la ma'buda siwak, aghithni ya ghiyat al-mustaghithin." In the name of Allah, by Allah, and on the path of the Messenger of Allah. "O Allah, I am entrusting you and I am putting my patience with you." He then raised his head to the sky and said, "O Allah, you know very well that they are killing the grandson of the Prophet, and there is no other grandson beside him." He pulled the arrow from his chest, causing the blood to stream down. He put his hand under his chest, filling it with blood. Then he threw the blood towards the sky and said, "Hawwana alayya ma nazala bi annahu bi'aynillah." My only comfort in that which has befallen me is knowing it is in the way of Allah. He then filled his hand again with blood, this time staining his hair and his beard. He said, "I wish to meet Allah and my grandfather drenched in my own blood." Imam Hussein, fatally wounded, was left lying on the ground for a considerable amount of time. None of the soldiers had the boldness to come finish him. The Imam's horse started roaming around him, staining his forehead and his nose with the Imam's blood. The horse kept on circling around the Imam as if it was telling him to get up because the enemy was approaching. Al-Imam al-Baqir was quoted as saying that the horse said, "Al-dhalimatu al-dhalimah min ummatin qatalat ibnu nabiyha." What an injustice has been done to the grandson of the Prophet by his own nation. The horse then headed towards the camp of Imam Hussein. The woman heard the voice of the horse, the sound of the horse, thinking that Imam Hussein had come back, thinking that the night had returned. However, they came out of their tents to see the horse without the night, drenched in the blood of his master. They began to beat their chests, shouting, "Ya Hussein! Ya Hussein!" Zainab immediately rushed to the scene to see what is happening of her brother. She saw the Imam laying on the ground, surrounded by the enemy. Lady Zainab shouted, "Ya ibn Sa'ad, ama fikum min Muslim?" "Oh, Ibn Sa'ad, is there not a Muslim among you? Have you no mercy to see my brother in this state?" Umar ibn Sa'ad, his tears streaming down his face, shouted to his soldiers, "Go down and bring him peace." At the sound of that command, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan began to approach the Imam. At that moment, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan came to the Imam. He was surrounded. One of the enemy soldiers began to stab the Imam. Another one, Shimr, came and sat on his chest. He kicked him. He sat on his chest. Then he cursed the Imam. He cursed his father. Then he struck him on his head with his sword. And then he removed his dagger. He took a hold of the Imam's head. He lifted his dagger and he began to sever the head of the Imam. Rahimallahu man nada wa Husayna wa Husayna wa Shahida wa Madluba. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وسيعلم أي منقلب وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.